To say life has a way of throwing us curveballs is an understatement. Sometimes they're more than curveballs, but crushing blows that are so overwhelming that you seriously wonder how you would take the next step. Overwhelming circumstances. This is one of those stories. By the way, you will continue to find stories like this intermingled with the other episodes that are much lighter throughout this podcast, kind of like it is in real life. Why? Because I am quite certain many listeners are facing their own overwhelming circumstances. And if I can find incredible people who have faced the most difficult situations in life and somehow survived it, well, maybe their story of how they did it will encourage others who are in the middle of it. 8 years have passed since my friend Scott and his wife Jamie and their daughters Haley and Tegan lost their beloved Landon to pediatric cancer at the age of 10. Scott is my guest, and he speaks for the surviving family and for Landon. You cannot see Scott as he tells their story, but I could see the anguish on his face as he talks about Landon, and this story is gut-wrenching. But as difficult as it is, there are moments when I saw his quivering lips turn to little crooked smiles as he remembers. Bright spots in the middle of intense darkness may be just what gets any of us through. I saw a hint of a smile when he talked about Landon living large as a kid and even continuing to live large and stretching his family in spite of the awful circumstances. I saw it when Scott talked about how he and Jamie supported each other every step of the way and became closer because of it. He knows the statistics of how many couples do not survive such a loss. I saw it when he talked about Landon's sisters, who are fully living their own lives in a world that never stops turning, just as what a now 19-year-old Landon would have wanted. I saw the smile when he talked about the overwhelming support they received from people God sent their way, including other family, trusted friends, work family, and even strangers who he only met during this awful journey. I saw it when he talked about how important it was to never lose faith, even when your world was collapsing around you. I saw it when he talked about a pastor who relentlessly walked with them every step of the way and not only allowed them to be human, but encouraged it. I saw the smile when he talked about the incredible celebration of life that was held at the school and included all kinds of fun things for kids to do at a unique event that truly honored their son. I saw it when he talked about the L3 Foundation and what they're doing to help others to fight childhood cancer in Landon's honor and memory. I saw the smile again as he told the story of his own physical issues and his determination to not only survive, but thrive. This is for sure a story of excruciating pain and overwhelming circumstances, but there were bright spots along the way. Scott's journey shows that no matter what you're facing, there will be bright spots for you if you just agree to look for them.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. My guest today is a friend of about 25 years, close to it. His name is Scott Ahrendt. He is a lawyer, and I'm honored to have you on, Scott. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Bruce. Thanks for inviting me.
Scott's story is difficult. In fact, it is the most difficult story one can have in life, but it is also inspiring. Scott lives in Houston, Texas, but he grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, right, Scott? So tell me about that.
Well, and I'm glad you got the right Dakota, Bruce. So I appreciate that. Yeah, so born and raised in South Dakota, actually spent the first 6 years of my life in Vermillion, South Dakota, which is a little south of Sioux Falls, but majority of my life growing up in Sioux Falls. Great community as a kid to grow up in. The city was large enough, but not too large. Made friends there way back when that I still have today and still cherish. And
How big is Sioux Falls?
yeah, well, back then it was probably 75,000 people. Today, it's now officially, I guess, a metro area, and it's over 250,000 people.
Really?
It's one of the fastest growing places in America from time to time over the years. And both my parents are actually from Vermillion, South Dakota. Couldn't have asked for two better people to have as my parents. Larry and Gloria Ahrendt, fantastic. I have two younger brothers. I was the oldest of the group. However, I look up to both of them figuratively and literally. I'm the runt of the family. So one's in Sioux Falls. My youngest brother Jason, other brother Jamie's in Sioux City, Iowa. My parents are back in Vermillion now.
You left there and went to, was it University of South Dakota? Is that where you went to school?
Yeah,
And
did undergrad and law school.
And that is where?
Yep. So that's also in Vermillion, South Dakota.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you were at home, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never had any intention of leaving the state, but life throws things at you, right?
Yeah. So how did you meet your bride, Jamie? And
Yeah.
you guys have been married for how long?
Oh wow, I better get this right.
Yeah, you better.
I'll probably be listening to this. 29 years. Next year will be 30.
You met her in college, I assume, right?
Yeah. Yep. Met her in undergrad. My sophomore year, her freshman year. I could probably take you to within 4 square feet of where she was the first time I saw her, and I could tell you what she was wearing. I mean, I vividly remember it. Made an impression on me that day.
You just got your points back from wondering if you knew how long how long you'd been married. You just scored. You're a smart guy.
Halloween party, and her sorority and my fraternity were having a mixer, and so we went over to serenade them. And this pretty girl came walking out of the house, and we're all, it's Halloween, so we're all in costumes, right? In a onesie with a bottle. And I thought she, kind of cute, and kind of, saw her that night, didn't really talk much. And probably 2 months later, our houses were paired together for a variety show. And it just happened. We both were in it. Wow, there's that girl again. And asked her out shortly thereafter, and we started dating. Probably less than 2 weeks into it, I knew she was the one.
Unbelievable. But when you look back on it to what has happened in your life since then, that was a gift, right? Incredible. Can you imagine? I don't know how you even think about it, but going through what you guys have been through without each other, and that's another story, and I want to talk about it. So was coming to Houston your first job as a lawyer? Did you work out there first before you came to Houston?
Yeah, so graduated law school in '94 and knew that I didn't want to do private practice. I was more interested in an in-house type role. And it just happened that a company in Rapid City, South Dakota was looking for counsel. Applied for it and got the job. And I don't know if you'll remember this name from way back when. I know you know today's name, but it's a little company called Prairie States Life Insurance Company. And their primary product was insurance that was used to fund prearranged funerals.
So a couple of years ago, and more than that now, I get mixed up, 4 or 5 years ago, we were out there on a vacation with my wife's siblings, and we ended up in Rapid City one night, and I walked over to and I saw it when I rode by or something. I walked over to look. It was at night. I couldn't go in. I would have. but I couldn't go in. But yeah, I know right where that is on the corner there.
Wish I'd known you were going to be there. We could have set something up with Tammy Schultz, and
Yeah,
she would have loved to have given you a tour.
yeah. Well, I actually talked to her later. I know Tammy well.
Yeah,
I was there. I didn't think about it, and I was there at night, and we left the next morning, so I didn't try
yeah,
to do that. From there, so just so people will know, there's a connection with Service Corp International and this insurance company. So talk about that and how you ended up over on this side.
right. Yeah. So a couple of years after joining Prairie States, we changed our name to American Memorial Life Insurance Company. And one of the great things that happened right around the time that I started working there was we started working with a company called SCI. And back then, SCI had a couple different insurance companies they were using, and we were trying hard to get their business. And we kept getting a little bit more and a little bit more. And back in the 90s, SCI was acquiring a lot of funeral homes and cemeteries. And so we'd always joke that, one of these days SCI is going to buy us. And September 30th of 98, SCI bought us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so they bought me in June of 1998. So,
Yeah.
and of course, I was a little drop in the ocean, but that was a big deal when that happened. I can tell you that.
That was a good day for
So
the company.
tell me about your courtship and ending up marrying. Did you guys get married there? I suppose, right, in South Dakota.
Yeah, we did. Jamie's from Rapid City, and you're talking about the American Memorial Building. Immediately across the street from that is a hotel, and that's actually where our wedding reception is.
Oh, really? So you guys got married, and then how long after that did you move to Houston?
Yeah, well, so we were married in 93. We moved to Houston. My first day at SCI was August 4th of 1999. And it was kind of funny how it happened. Prior to that, gotten to know quite a few people at SCI because Amlic was a small company. So we were doing product development, licensing, marketing, training, and really engaged, making sure that SCI had what they needed. And they kind of, even before the deal had closed, they had intimated, hey, it'd be great if you moved down to Houston. Chuckled and said, that's nice. Didn't really want to leave South Dakota. And I was down here in March of 99, and Jim Shelger was general counsel back then. He found out I was in town helping out with something. He pulled me out of a meeting and basically said, Scotty, let's go look for your house. That was Jim's job offer. And he took me down around Sugar Land, which is where he lived, and the neighborhood he started in. They had the sheets at the front of the house, and I grabbed one and handed it to him. And I said, "How much are you paying me?" And he looked at it. He said, "We got to go to a different neighborhood." At the end of the day, he'd made an offer, and I called Jamie, and she was tired of the South Dakota winters and said she wanted to move someplace warm. And if anything, Houston's warm.
And so you've been there, what, almost, that was 99, 09, 19, 23 years, right?
23 years in August.
Wow. So it's become home for sure. You're a fixture around that office, that is for sure. So you started having kids. Had you had any kids before you came to Houston?
Yep. Yeah, we have Haley, our oldest, she's 26 now. She was born in April of 96. And April 14th, so the day before taxes were due, which was interesting because she was scheduled for the 22nd, but circumstances came about, and next thing we knew, we got to meet Haley at the hospital on the 14th, and a good friend who's a CPA, and he came over and got to meet Haley, and I said, "Hey, can we go to your place and do my taxes?" So the day after she was born, we were completing the taxes. But we had Haley, and Tegan joined us in February of 2000 after we'd moved down here. And then Landon, our youngest, was born in June of 2003.
Two girls, and then you had the boy,
Yeah.
and that's where the story gets difficult. But before we get there, I just want people to understand that in a company like this is a big company. But Scott and I not only have talked on the phone a lot, but we've been in meetings together, not only in Houston, but all over the country. I mean, I would have you come to, I had a big area for most of the time, and there were not many meetings that I didn't have somebody from the legal department there presenting. Scott mostly was talking about always doing the right thing and not taking shortcuts, and our company would spend money to make sure we did the right thing. And Scott was one of those people that spearheaded that to make sure that we had a culture of always doing the right thing no matter what the cost. Isn't that true? And so through all that, through a lot of experiences of people maybe not doing the right thing all the time, and we've had there's no telling how many conversations, and there are times that we didn't always agree on it either. That's part of it, but we talk it out, and whatever we got to do, we would end up doing, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the great things about SCI, right? One of the things I know I enjoy, there are many, but we've always had that commitment to doing the right thing and disclosure and making sure that did make a mistake, that we were honest with our families and apologized, offered to do the right thing and give them options. And, that I think says an awful lot about a company, to have that type of commitment and to have had the consistency of that commitment. That's one of the reasons why I've stayed, the people and who we are and what we do. And this better than me. It's a calling for so many of our people. They make legitimate differences in the lives of the people that they serve day in and day out.
By whatever reason, you ended up at a pre-need insurance company in Rapid City, where you probably hadn't even thought about that term growing up. You had to figure out what that was first. So you end up working with this huge company where most everybody in it. You really do. Certainly all the leaders and the stuff. A lot of people out here, and then you've got two kids. You got a wonderful life. You got a beautiful wife. Life is going on, and all of a sudden, your precious Landon, your son, the first son you had, the only son you had, all of a sudden, he's diagnosed with cancer. And I know this is difficult to even talk through, but I think there's a lesson here. There's a message here that we can get out.
In order to do that, I need to tell you just a little bit about Landon, because I think that'll help to set the stage a bit. So he was just a little athlete, anything with a ball. He played it. He excelled at it. Point guard. When they had flag football, he was the quarterback, center midfielder. When playing soccer, he loved it. Like so many kids his age, he was 9 years old, just gravitated towards that, loved running. He was training for his first triathlon, which I always got such a kick out of because I've done a few. April of 2012, after a soccer practice, he was taking his shoes off, took his socks off, and I looked at his right foot and it was a little bit swollen. And I said, "Did you get kicked?" And he's like, "No." Does it hurt? "No." "Did you roll your ankle?" "No, it's fine, Dad." And it was just a little bit of swelling, and 9-year-old boy, so you're not really going to think anything about it, right? And didn't give it any further thought. And we got toward, it was the beginning of June, and it hadn't went away, and it gotten a little bit bigger. So we reached out to his pediatrician, and he went in for an appointment. And she said, "It's probably just a cyst. I wouldn't worry about it too much, but let's look into it a little bit further." And scheduled an MRI. And by this time, with the MRI being scheduled, the bump was not just a little bit of swelling. It was a small egg on the top of his foot, to the point to where you couldn't see the metatarsals at all. And we were concerned. And so they did the MRI, and the next thing we knew, we were having a biopsy done. And the biopsy was on a Thursday, and didn't really know anything at that point. And they said, well, it'll be the following week, we'll get back to you with the results. All right, that's fine. That Sunday morning, we were up, we were getting ready for church, and in the living room, and my phone rang, and I recognized the number and answered it. It was the doctor who did the biopsy, and he said, I have some bad news. It's a cancer. We're not sure exactly what type it is yet, but I have called the people at Texas Children's Cancer Center, and they've got you scheduled for an appointment on Tuesday, and you're going to be in the hands of this doctor. He's great. I've worked with him before. And I just, you just remember that all the air being sucked out of you.
Can't imagine. And Jamie as well. I mean, you both, yeah.
At this point, she was standing there. She could hear something in my voice.
Oh, okay.
But I was, all you're doing is reacting, and it's just, okay, all right, okay, where? And got off the phone with him, and the kids were all down there as well. That grabbed Jamie and took her into another room and closed the door and said, here's what's going on. And we had those couple of days before we had the appointment, and we did exactly what you shouldn't do. We became Dr. Google. And went out, and it's a soft tissue cancer, and you can narrow it down there, and we knew Landon's age, and so we're looking, and rhabdomyosarcoma was what kept coming up as I was researching it, and it is. Well, the way one of the doctors described it during treatment was, it is one of the most badass of the pediatric cancers that's out there. If you don't catch it soon enough, the mortality rate is very, very high. So we went in that next week, met with the doctors. They had full MRI scheduled, CT scans, X-rays, blood work. They did a biopsy of the lymph nodes on his right and left hip. And when they got the results back, it was not only the primary tumor on his foot, but it had spread, metastasized as well into both of his lungs.
So that quick, I mean, from just having the bump to you started seeing about it and got to that point.
Yep. And it I mean, there's so many things when you look back on it, and the what ifs, and we were too slow, and you second guess yourself. But
well, what did you tell him, Scott? Were you able? Did he know what was going on at that point, or how did you handle that?
9-year-old boy, right? And then his sisters, and Tegan's 3 years older, and Haley is 4 years older. But we've always tried to be open with our kids, and so we didn't lie to them or try to minimize or anything like that. We just said, look, we have to go to Texas Children's, and the doctors have said that it is some sort of cancer. We're not sure what it is or what that means, but this is what we need to do. And we tried to be pretty matter of fact about it, and not, I mean, as much as you can, because it's your child,
Right.
but not be too emotional. Try to be even keeled, because we knew that that's what they needed, all three of them. Then just take it kind of step by step, and each step of the way. Well, these are the tests that we have to do, and here's what you have to do, and then we'll get the results. And he had to have a port so that he could receive chemotherapy placed in his chest, and that was a really hard day. He was.
Can't imagine.
We all were nervous and scared. And I'll tell you something. I mentioned earlier about what great people we have, and you and I have talked about that so many times over the years. I know you know her, but Virginia Brown came down that day and actually sat with me and Jamie. And
she is top of the heap, man. I love her.
Pretty awesome.
She's love special. Her. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
So
we can talk about this too, but in that instance, a lot of people are hesitant to do that because they don't know what to say. The truth is, it wasn't about what she said. What you remember is she was there and she sat with you, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Brings tears to my eyes.
All you can really do is just take it one day at a time, one moment at a time, because when they came back with the results from all the scans and the biopsy, the other thing that they provided to us was the treatment plan. And it started, I think it was like mid-August of 2012. And it was to go through June of 2013. And it was multiple treatments on at least a weekly basis, if not daily, sometimes multiple chemos on a daily basis. Some of it was in the clinic. Sometimes the type of chemos that they were putting into him were so toxic that he had to have hospitalized stays because they had to watch his immune system and his internal organs so that they didn't shut down. And you could get overwhelmed if you looked at everything as a whole. And so we just tried to take it a day at a time,
I don't even know how you even, I can't even think in those terms. I mean, it's excruciating just to hear this.
The treatment started in August of 12, and said that the plan was for 9 months of it. And it was supposed to be the end of June 2013 that it was done. And the thing about it was initially we just had incredible results. And the first set of scans after the initial treatments were in December of 12. And I can remember doctor coming in, he had a smile on his face, and Jamie and Landon and I are sitting there, and he brought up the scans and he was showing us, and the tumor on his foot, and you could watch it. I mean, the tumor had almost melted it completely away. You could see the structure of his foot again. He showed us his lungs and the tumors that were in his lungs. Huge difference, much, much smaller. Some of them have even went away. And so, at the end of it, Dr. Morale made the comment, he goes, from a clinical standpoint, these results are phenomenal. And this again goes back to people in our company, Bruce, and I know you knew him well, but Steve Mack, I had told Steve that story because he was going through his own situation at that time. And I told him about the doctor saying phenomenal results. And Steve's penchant for writing a note to people.
Right.
A couple days later, I had this note on my desk from Steve Mack, and it had one word on it. It was phenomenal.
Huh.
And so all that's going on, and it's this roller coaster ride that you're on, and we stick with the treatments, and I think the next set of tests were in March, and by that time Jamie and I had learned a term that we'd never heard before, but now being cancer parents you hear too often. It's called scanxiety. And the anxiety around that period of time from when the scans are taken to when you get the results, it can maybe only be 2 or 3 days. Knowing that it's your child, and all you want is to do whatever you can to make them better. Saying that it's stressful is an understatement, but we continue to have really good results. And the March results, foot was fantastic. By that time, though, not only did he have chemo, he had 25 days straight of radiation on his foot. Think the worst sunburn you've ever seen, and then magnify it by about 10. And that's what radiation does. So his body's being decimated by the chemos, and then his foot is torn apart by the radiation, and the kid's on crutches getting around.
And I'm sure in pain as well, right?
Yeah, but he's still a 9-year-old boy, so he's flying around the house on his crutches and doing tricks and all that. Landon and I went to a family camp one weekend after the radiation was done, and he has these crutches, lost all of his hair other than a couple wisps. It's an outdoor camp. I mean, horseback riding. They've got obstacle courses, swimming pools, arts and crafts. They were playing games. There's probably 10 different families there. At the end of the day, they're just kids. He's still just a 9-year-old boy who likes to have fun and be goofy and hang out with his friends. And we're at this camp, and I'm thinking, well, he's not going to be able to do much. Second day when we're there, we're out by this obstacle course. And so here's this kid with a sock on one foot because he can't get a shoe on it, moving around on crutches. And he decides that he wants to race me up this climbing wall, down, and then rappel down. I generally don't, and it never cut my kids slack. If we're competing, it's a legit competition. Kick my butt up that climbing wall on one foot. To share that just from the standpoint of, even though you're going through all that stuff and it's tough, there were still a lot of really, really bright moments, positive things, great memories. And it was one of the things that Jamie and I tried to do at the outset was just remember that even though we're going through this, life's still happening. The girls still have all their activities. Landon's still just a kid. Let's make sure that we keep our eyes open and find all the bright spots that are there, right, so that you don't get swallowed up. So, that's all happening. I mentioned the March results. They were so close. I mean, there was like a wisp on one of his lungs and a speck on another. And we're coming up toward the end of the treatments. And we get to June, to his last treatment, which also tied in with the tests. And we get the test results back, and the tumors had not shrunk. The wisp had gotten more solid, and they said, well, it's a relapse. So they put us into a new set of treatment protocols.
The last treatment, you found that out.
Yeah. When we literally were thinking, we're done with this. We have beaten it. We're going to be able to put that behind us. It didn't happen. And the challenge is with kids' cancers, there's not a lot of new that's out there. And these chemotherapies that we're putting into our kids were developed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, developed for use on adults, not kids. And pediatric cancers are very different from adult cancers. And so when they had their one protocol that they typically use for rhabdo, and that's the protocol, because I now have a very good friend who his son had rhabdo, and Sawyer's protocols were pretty dang close to what Landon had. So it's not like there's this novel way of treating it. It's these old, harsh, toxic substances that we're pouring into kids to try to save their lives. And we get to the end of it, they say he's had a relapse. You don't go back into that initial protocol because that no longer works. The cancer's figured out how to beat it. And so they tried something else, held it off for a while. In the midst of all of that, Landon had a Make-A-Wish trip, which was super cool. So right, again, going, I guess, 10-year-old boy at this point, but still a boy. And Make-A-Wish is such a fabulous organization. These two ladies came and sat down with him to learn a little bit about him and what he wanted to do. Well, he decided he wanted to go to a water park. And the first water park he picked was over in United Arab Emirates. So just a short flight, right? It kind of chuckled and got a map out and showed him how far away it was and how long it'd take. And he said, well, my second choice is Atlantis.
Okay. It's a little bit easy.
We went to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And some really great memories there. All the while still, we were able to work it and fit it in between treatments, which was great. But we got back, and boy, November or December of 2013, started to have some issues, bad issues. And middle part of December, the doctor came in and said to us that we needed to start looking at a hospice. And
that's a whole nother hurt, right?
I just remember I was so mad because it's like, you don't give up. You can't give up on my kid. We got to figure something out. And
at that point, you're mad with them. You're mad with God. You're just angry. Period. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it just hurt and confused, and asking yourself, what did you do wrong? What did I do, or what could I have done?
What did I do to deserve this is one thing you ask, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How did you and Jamie, your relationship through all this? Because I see a lot of people that go through this and a couple that really don't make it. I mean, they literally, and you can see why, listening to this story, you get angry with each other, you get angry with the world. I can see how it easily could happen. I know somehow you did, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know me pretty well, so Jamie has to be pretty special. We can start with that, right?
Right. I hear you.
We have talked about this so many times over our entire marriage. We balance each other. We balance each other so well. When one is down or off, the other one it's just uncanny. The other one's there. And it was that way through everything with Landon as well. There were times where, and obviously we were hurting together throughout it, but it just always seemed like the other one would be there to pick you up. And maybe part of it's our focus on, there are blessings every day, and we resolved early on that we were going to look for them because there were so many great things that happened. in the midst of just an awful, awful situation. Just the kindness, not only of family and friends, but complete strangers who'd be there to support. And I don't know how we did it. I'm lucky.
Yeah, you are. I think you probably grew closer together through it, but I'm telling you, it can go the other way. And so I think what you're saying, you agreed on how you were going to do this, and you were in agreement that we're going to look for the bright spots. We're going to take a day at a time. All the stuff you said, and it ended up you couldn't have made it without each other. Can you imagine if all through this that you guys would have split up? I just think about that of how many husbands and wives have split up, the hurt that goes with not only the loss of a family member, but the loss of each other. It's dangerous territory, isn't it?
It is. And I can remember hearing along the lines of over 50% of couples who are together dealing with a situation like this, when you lose a child, over 50% end up in divorces.
Yeah.
And it's not just the emotional piece of it, but the financial side of it and the stress that's put on people. Because we were very lucky in that Jamie is a stay-at-home mom, and so that really helped with balancing things throughout. But for a family where both parents work and need to be at their jobs and maybe don't have an employer that's frankly is understanding or solid as what I had, they end up having to make a choice. Do I take care of my kid, and am I there to help out through that, or do I lose my job? And
it just
your
goes
family
on and
always
on.
comes first.
Yeah,
there's stress with that.
Yeah, it just goes on and on. So I want to get into your story too, because you had a whole new thing happen after all this. But before we do that, I remember when he died, when your precious Landon, this guy full of life, I used to see pictures of him running around soccer. He was all-American boy. I happen to know just last week he would have been, what, 20? Is that right?
19.
19. I'm going back to what I said. Here you are. You came from outside of the industry. I grew up in this industry. I don't remember anything outside of funeral stuff. And now you all of a sudden learned about, not all of a sudden, but over a period of time, you learned about what this industry is about, what this profession is about, what people do, how important they are. And then all of a sudden, you needed exactly what you had been learning about. You needed it for yourself. And y'all did a great thing in celebrating his life. And I think it's worth hearing a little bit, and we don't have to get into all the details, but a little bit of what that impact had. Because you had two choices. You could go and get him this casket and put it in the church and sing 3 verses and read the scripture and sing the songs and walk out, or you could do something different. And you guys chose something different. So talk a little bit about that and what it meant to you. It was amazing for me to see it from here. I was not out there, but I was keeping up, I can tell you that.
So what we did partially was found in my first experience at a funeral, and I was 6 years old, and it was exactly what you just described. Casket at the front of a church and 3 verses and 3 songs, and off you go. And I remember just being very confused as a little kid, and I couldn't tell you whose funeral we were at, Bruce. But that had always stuck with me. That, and my mom gave me a Wild Cherry Lifesaver during that. So it's weird the things you remember, right?
And you always associate that with a funeral, a bad funeral, right?
Yeah, but I still like Wild Cherry Lifesaver, so that's good. So when it came to Landon, his sisters and cousins and all of his friends and his teammates and his classmates, what I didn't want to happen, what Jamie and I didn't want to happen, was that they were just sad, because they all had so many great memories of him and things that they had done. And so what we decided to do, and working with the team here in Houston, was we wanted to turn it into a celebration. And even before he died, I'd had a couple conversations with Mike White and with Lee Longino about just to kind of start thinking about what do we want to do and how do we make it personal. And so they, it was pretty cool. I mean, just the touches they did, from little things like wrapping his casket with the pictures of the stadiums of his two favorite soccer teams. So Manchester United on one side and the Houston Dynamo on the other. Player cards were his friends, and this was a total surprise. There were so many surprises, but it just goes to show you, I mean, our people listen to families when they're with them, and they do that little extra, and the impact. They had player cards of him, and rather than on the back being like his vital statistics and 6 goals in the 2010 season, it was blank so that friends and family could write their favorite memories. And then they placed it. It was 2014 was a World Cup year, and it was in Brazil, and Landon died right before it started, so he never got to see that. Well, you got to see the World Cup just probably from a better viewpoint than what I had. But they created Landon's Cup, and all the cards went into that. And they got to bring that home and read so many great comments about how our son impacted others. He went to the cemetery in the Houston Dynamo team van rather than a hearse. Yeah. So you may have to change your show to View from a Team Van.
Yeah, I hear you.
But little things like that really made a difference. That after the service, we had it in the high school because there were so many people, and we had set up in the auxiliary gyms, one of those inflatable obstacle courses. The kids were able to play soccer. They had all of Landon's favorite foods. They did some videography where they interviewed a bunch of his friends so that we could hear even more, and his sisters. And it's a horrible day, but it really made an impact on us.
I think the importance of support you get from other people and having an event like you did at least gave you a chance to get a breath and say, wow, instead of saying, oh, me. You were saying, wow, my gosh. I mean, it doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't change your hurt, but you do say, wow, things have changed. And, I grew up with the 3 points and a poem funerals, and it kills me that I see people now not having any kind of celebration, any kind of service. I think that it's a lot of healing that takes place in those events. All of a sudden, you were hurting in your neck, I think, right? And you went to the doctor, and all of a sudden you find out you've got kidney cancer.
Yeah, well, so it started with numbness in my right thumb and forefinger, and went to the chiropractor, and it didn't really make a difference. And a buddy who's a surgeon, and he said, well, let me do an x-ray. X-ray led to an MRI. And all of a sudden we're in front of a neurosurgeon who is talking only about my neck and saying, I've seen this before. It's likely metastasized from other parts of your body. We hadn't seen any of the x-rays, so I had no idea what he was talking about. Jamie and I are reeling again. It felt like, here we go again.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, full body MRI, CT scans, biopsy on my neck. So 2 things came out of it, Bruce. The first was I had a tumor on my C5 in my neck. Fortunately, it was benign, and it had been a very slow-growing tumor from what the neurosurgeon said, probably over 25 years that it was in my body. The blessing was just simply this: but for that tumor, they would not have found the malignant tumor on my kidney. So in March of 2020, as the world's getting ready to shut down. I have an even bigger event than that that's happening because our oldest Haley's getting married. She and her husband Nathan, they were married on literally on that Saturday before COVID shut America down. I was supposed to go in for surgery, I think a week and a half after that. The hospitals kind of shut down as well, right? Because we didn't know what COVID was or how to treat it. And I remember being told that my surgery was non-essential. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I've got a malignant tumor on my kidney and you're telling me it's non-essential. But really great people at MD Anderson here in Houston. And I had surgery on my kidney in mid-April of 2020. And 3 weeks later, 2 surgeries, back-to-back surgeries on my neck. And they were able to remove it all. I now have titanium that goes from my C3 to my T2 in my neck.
You were going through all that right by yourself because nobody could come visit you, right?
Yeah.
You were just laid in the hospital, and you could, I guess, FaceTime Jamie, but that was about it. She wouldn't even let her in the hospital. And and the surgery, I remember, was hours and hours long on your neck. I remember that. I mean, you guys have been through a lot. There's no question. You're well now, thank God. You got through it. I guess the first question is, I know you're a man of faith, and I know that it had to shake your faith, not only with what you went through at Landon, but what you went through personally.
Very blessed. A pastor at our church, he's just a godsend to us because he's been there every step of the way. I remember telling him one time that how mad I was at God and just angry and yelling at him. And he looked at me, he goes, "That's good." And I'm yelling at God and you're telling me that's good. He goes, "No, you're still talking to him. I'd be more worried if you weren't talking to him."
Yeah.
It always helps me with perspective.
Right. Wow. If you had a message to people that are going through overwhelming circumstances in their life.
The message, gosh, you just have to keep your faith. You have to trust the people that are around you. We ended up with such great caregivers. I think there's blessings every single day, no matter what you're going through. And if you can always be on the lookout for them, and what I found is it helps you not spiral.
One of the things I've noticed, Scott, and I've said this probably on this podcast and other episodes, but I know I've seen it in my career, is when something happens to somebody, say a young person dies, as an example, like we're talking about, when somebody comes to that house or even in the funeral home that has been through that, the person is going through it currently, and if they know that, their antennas go up. They say, this person has been through this. These other people, I appreciate them coming, and they've been nice, but this person's still breathing and standing here, and he's been through this, and they immediately embrace them, and you've got full ministry capabilities with them. And I know that's part of what happens when somebody survives through what you've survived through.
Yeah, and it's pediatric cancer is far too common. It's still, thank goodness, we always facetiously say that it's a club. It's a horrible club, but I've met so many great people over the years. Yeah, people helped us, and it simply from the standpoint of giving back and serving others, if that's the least you can do to be there. Like when we were talking about Virginia, you don't have to be there to say anything. You just need to be there.
Yeah, better to not say anything. Yeah, you don't need a speech. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Scott, talk about the L3 Foundation. Tell me what you're doing and what people need to know about it.
So L3 stands for Live, Love, Landon. And L3 Foundation is something that we started in June of 2014, right after Landon had passed. It was something that we were doing regardless, because one of the things that we quickly realized during everything was that we had a really great support system within our family, our company, and the Kingwood community, but not everybody was that fortunate. And so we had talked with Landon about how are we going to make a difference? What are we going to do? And we actually let Landon set the direction of the L3 Foundation. And it has two major prongs to it. The first is trying to find a cure through immunotherapy or other novel means. Basically meaning let's not pour toxins into our kids. Watching your kid's hair fall out and his immune system just be destroyed, having the color of his urine turn bright blue and having to joke with your kid about having Smurf pee, just to try to add some levity to a horrible situation is awful. So that was one thing that Landon asked for us to do. The second was to help families who are going through it. And we do that, talk about both of them. On the family side of things, it can be something as simple as parking tokens, because parking at the med center is extremely expensive. Oftentimes it's money for food while they're down for, week, 2 week, 3 week long hospitalized stays. We've helped out with rent, and we do a lot of things in that regard. We also try to do something special for the child and the siblings. And it's always important not to forget the siblings, because they're going through it as well and they're struggling. And so remembering and involving them, we found is really important. On the other piece of it, to date, we have funded right around $700,000 in research here at Texas Children's Cancer Center, and then also within the Sanford healthcare system, which is up in my hometown, Sioux Falls.
Well, I'll tell you, Scott, when you do that, you're honoring Landon, you're honoring God, you're honoring a basic principle of life, and that is it's better to give than receive. You do it in weakness. It's certainly not in a position of strength, right? It's a position of helplessness. You have a website, right?
Yep, L3Foundation.com. There's also a Facebook page, Live Love Landon, and they both have information on the foundation and some of the events that we do.
So, folks, I hope you'll look that up. Check him out. This guy's for real. I've known him a long time. I promise you, he's greatly influenced my life. I consider him a friend. I'm retired, but we'll be friends for now on. That is for sure. Scott, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, Bruce.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.